just love football? Don't you guys love primetime football? Well, this primetime game that I'm watching currently on the TV right in front of me, I have myself positioned perfectly. So I'm talking to you guys, the viewer, or if you're listening, but if you're listening, I'm watching Giants 49ers. And the New York Giants in primetime, well, that can mean one thing and one thing only. What does that one thing mean? That means it is episode number 7 of Danny Dimes in Primetime, but also episode number 248, though, of YWC Football Talk with Bigrat 310. Why? Because, like I said, Danny Dimes in Primetime, the two of us link up. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm starting to feel like the main co-host at this rate. I've been all over the show with two Danny Dimes primetime games and a Dolphins Patriots game early in the schedule. I feel like I'm everywhere right now.
And we have another one coming up next Monday night. We have October 2nd, and then Sunday, October 16th. So a lot of dimes in prime time right now. But before we talk about this week, obviously, I want to ask you the simple question from last week's game. More of, obviously, you guys won and you looked good. But what impressed you the most about the Dolphins on Sunday? Because I have some things that I don't want to say impressed, but was kind of caught off guard by of who had better games than expected.
Yeah, so I listening back to our preview of that game, it was actually like pretty spot on. Like I feel like we both like had a good sense for the kind of game it would be. Like I think I predicted 21-17 and you predicted 24-20. It was like right around the range of where the game fell at 24-17. We made a big deal of saying the Dolphins are probably not going to throw it all over the yard. Tyreek Hill's probably not going to have a monster day. It's probably going to be more of a run-heavy game, more of a running backs and tight ends kind of game. So I guess what impressed me about the Finns, like I'm not surprised that they were able to run so well. I knew they could do that. It's why I think with people who if you think the way to, and look, Bill Belichick obviously is a much, 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 much smarter defensive coach than I have ever any chance of ever being. So I'm not at all inclined to think that I'll have a better game plan than him. And he did exactly what I expected him to do. But in my opinion, I think it's a trap to think the way we beat the Dolphins is we put all our deep safeties back and dare them to run the ball or throw checkdowns. Because Tua's not like Josh Allen. Like in theory, that strategy works for Josh Allen because he doesn't have the discipline to do that over and over again without fighting for a deep ball that's not there and maybe throw a pick. Tua is perfectly, like I said on the pod, he is perfectly content throwing short routes all day long. Mike McDaniel is very happy to run the ball if you're going to give him an incredibly light box. I think the Dolphins, as you kind of saw in that game, like the Dolphins do just fine in that environment. And so what impressed me, it's like I knew they could do that. I'm not at all surprised. But you do want to see pen to paper. Like one of my big stances this year was that the running game will be a lot better this year as the offensive line get better acclimated to the system of McDaniel and the San Fran scheme and all that. So just seeing the proof that the running game will actually be really good when we need it to be. Again, not surprising, but I'm happy to see it. Like that's what we need to do in order to be a very versatile offense where you take away Hill and Waddle, we'll kill you with the run game. You don't do everything to stop Hill and Waddle, we'll kill you.
Which we'll see. We'll see what happens because obviously Waddle, I believe, still in concussion protocol.
Yeah.
That hit, I know a lot of people are calling that like I've seen some people call it dirty. I didn't look at it as dirty. I just looked at Mapu where he was in a lose situation just because where he was flying in the head, all that stuff. The one thing with Tua that really caught me by surprise was his ability to get rid of the ball so quickly, especially when he's in open space. He only took one sack against the Patriots team that really gave Jalen Hurts fits. And not to compare his apples to oranges, but obviously, Philadelphia's got much better offensive caliber than Miami does. Miami's still up there, though, but just that was a thing. And even to learning about, like, Melissa Stark's reporting where it was he's taking jiu-jitsu to learn to fall on his head better. Because even the sack he took, it's not like he's getting ragdolled out there. Even, like, when he slides down, he kind of goes, but then he's not going full force like we've seen Josh Allen do through these first couple of games. I hate myself for the fact that I called Andrew Van Ginkel underrated, and then he went out there and had a great game. He was a perfect pass disruptor. And then you also, too, called the Xavier Howard, Devontae Parker mismatch, which, was shown. But the one thing I'll say from my side is even though they're 0-2, I said this on my last podcast, that Mac hasn't been a problem yet. Sunday was just simple errors, but also offensive line execution as a whole was my biggest concern with New England.
I was relatively impressed with Mac. I know his yards per attempt was very low, but I was frustrated as a fan watching the game, thinking like, okay, here's when the Dolphins get the 2 touchdown lead, and then the game kind of fizzles out. And I was impressed with how often he made plays off the blitz and how often he made plays. Honestly, the creation he showed, kind of like Tua in Week 1. A very popular Tua narrative is, oh, when the pocket breaks down, he can't make a play outside the pocket. And we as Dolphin fans have always known that's horseshit. You just don't watch enough Tua. But
Yeah.
to see it in Week 1 and to have most of America see it was awesome. Same thing with Mac. I mean, he scrambled 18 yards on 3rd and 15, which is like not something I thought I would ever see him do. He had that improvised touchdown to Hunter Henry in the end zone, even though most people, including New England people, seem to think that it should have been flagged. But nonetheless, that still showed great improbability on his end. So yeah, I was, despite the numbers, I was like decently impressed with some of the creation he showed out of the pocket in that game.
I know people don't like, obviously everyone has this whole, oh, if week 2 ended here, like I already had a week 2 take as well on my last show where I said, if like week 2 ends, obviously Mike McCarthy coach of the year, and then like Dak Prescott, I'd say offensive player of the year, just because I think right now Micah Parsons, if he keeps up his current pace, he's going to be in the MVP conversation, not just Depoy. But I said this right now with Mac, to where with Tua last year, obviously he did enough to impress to where he just got his 5th-year option. He didn't get a big mega deal. I would say if Mac keeps on his current progression of how he's playing, he will just get that 5th-year option picked up, no problem. And then it's a problem that say, hey, after his 4th year, if he plays well, that's when he can go and get his extension. So we'll see what happens. That's just something I wanted to throw out there to you.
And I would also say on the Van Ginkel point, because I heard it phrased a few times, Roscoe. Sorry for I have a dog here that is being very unruly, listeners, and I usually mute when they're going loud, but I'm talking right now, so I can't do that. So
it's all good.
Very quickly, I'll just say one of my favorite podcasts had a great joke where they were talking about how well Van Ginkel played against the Patriots, and then they said the Patriots will probably sign him to a huge deal in the offseason. And I got a very, very, very big laugh out of that because quite obviously it is a running Godchow, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. They seem to like picking from the Dolphins tree lately. And hey, Gink, to those who don't know, we thought we would lose Van Ginkel in the offseason. We were pretty sure he was going to leave.
Yes, I remember that.
It was the end of his rookie contract. And he wasn't going to start. And he wanted to come back. Maybe he just didn't have a good market anywhere else. Maybe he likes Miami. But he came back on a 1-year deal, was a backup to David Long for most of the summer. And then because Jalen Phillips got hurt, he started at edge in that game. He played awesome. It was very
cool. David Long was also very impactful as well as Big Rat screen goes. But yeah, David Long was also very impactful throughout that game. But we'll see what happens. And obviously you'll be back here October 26th or 25th. We'll have to figure out that last week of October for us to preview, obviously, because that's when New England goes to Foxborough. But anyway, guys, you see the ticker. You know what that means. We're like a Vegas sports book here where we talk about all the NFL games. And first up, I'm going to say this, Minnesota, LA. I'm going to say this right now. I don't care who wins. Over 54 is, I almost want to say free money, but I don't, just because I feel like it's that like weird even ground where like it's going to be an amazing game, but then it ends up being a shitty game, you know? As Big Rat has disappeared on us once again, folks. If Roscoe's causing trouble, I don't know what's going on. But
well, Roscoe's to the side. I'm back.
He is back.
I had to kick him out of the room officially. Roscoe's a great dog. He's a beautiful dog, but he's still a puppy and he likes to cause trouble. So over, yes, that's the play. I personally cannot bet a side in this game, and every betting gambling podcast I listen to, they've all kind of said the same thing. It's all very much like, dude, man, we have no idea how to pick a side on this. Like, we have no way of knowing. Like,
what a touchdown!
There's a flag though.
I
don't know. I mean, it might be roughing the passer, although Kittle doesn't seem too excited.
It might be, but if that's a touchdown, that's a beautiful footwork by Ronnie Bell. I think it's coming back. The way they're celebrating, I think that's coming back.
Fucking hell, man! I'm so pissed. I told my friend that Jawan Jennings would have a better game than him.
Well, anyway, yeah, back to this game. So that's why I feel like if you're going to bet this game, go on that over 54. But like, let's see what we got. Oh, offside on the defense. Never mind. So it's going to be a touchdown.
Hold on.
Oh, are you? Am I ahead of you? Or is he texting? Let's see this. Boom, boom. Rookie on Big Ten on Big Ten here. Banks on Bell on Banks. What is amazing footwork by Ronnie Bell as the Niners take a soon to be 10-3 lead. Come on,
Yes.
go.
So, but yes, as I was gonna say, um, as I was gonna say, as I was gonna say on this Vikings Chargers game, the no way to pick a side. Like it's really hard to know which side is going to win because they both have similar problems. It's like both their pass defenses are very leaky. Their offenses have been pretty good. The the Vikings are at home, but the Chargers have the better roster. Like obviously, it's a do or die situation for both teams. It's really hard to. I don't know how anyone can say with any degree of confidence like which team is going to get out of the slump, which isn't. Like most people are just by default saying the Chargers just because they were ahead of the Vikings early on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it can go either way.
I'm in that boat too, where it can go either way. But when it comes to picking a winner, I'm gonna go with the Chargers just because I trust them more to get it done. Because it's like that. Like this kind of screams Justin Herbert legacy game for the sense of, hey, this could be the win that turns their season around. Because also the Chargers have the Cowboys coming to town on Monday Night Football in a couple weeks, or week 6. So yeah, a couple weeks after this. So that's where I stand with this game. But like we say, for the smart amount of money, just bet the over and close your eyes. Washington versus Buffalo. Obviously, Washington's been that team to impress. I don't want to toot my own horn, but last week, who called Washington on the spread? Me, right here.
And who did not get Broncos right in the Fab Five? Me, over here. That was a loss.
But we did call right with Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo rebounding. Josh Allen, like that first drive, it's kind of you hold your breath if you're Buffalo, but then after that, 38-3 outscoring them. Like it's one of those things where we realized, no, Josh Allen's gonna be fine. With this game, like I look at it from the perspective of this, and I want you to see what you think. I think Buffalo's gonna win, but I think Washington covers at 6.5, and this is that game where everyone kind of realizes, hey, Washington, you may not be like able to compete with the elite of the elite yet, but there's signs of this team can make something happen.
Yeah, this is another one that's kind of hard for me. Apparently, a lot of the pros really don't know what to do with this game, so I'm probably gonna stay away instinctively. But I think it'll be good. We'll see.
I'm not betting this game. I'm just saying like what I think will happen.
Yeah. But I'm saying I don't know what will happen. Like you would think that, like it should be based on how Buffalo played last week, you would think that it'd be more of a one-sided game. But
yeah,
I have no clue.
I just think this is one of those games where everyone thinks Buffalo's going to run away with it, but then it's kept closer to where everyone thinks. Because I'm going to set this up beautifully for you. So Buffalo gets a close win, and everyone's like, Miami's coming to town, big divisional game. Obviously, you lost to the Jets week 1, so it's that little lingering doubt to where I'm not saying anything, like I'm not calling what's going to happen week 4, but it kind of sets that narrative up perfectly for your game against Buffalo week 4 in Orchard Park. So we'll see what happens. Let's just hope no Bills fans this week are arrested for being on coke, LSD, and marijuana and jumping into the new stadium site. Even those games in Raljon. Packers versus Saints. I'm going to be honest with you. I know the Packers are the favorite here, and I know I was on them last week too, but something about New Orleans. Like, they look re-energized in the defense. Like, they played really well. And I'll also say this too. Vegas house call occurred in that game Monday night. Meaning was to get the 2-point conversion, cover the 3.5, but still lose. Thank you, Carolina, for that one.
And they had done nothing the entire game on offense. I think Bryce Young had 60 yards passing entering that drive or something crazy because he only finished with 150, and that drive was 75 yards and it was all passes. So it was truly a we don't care. We're just trying to get out of here. We don't want to avoid injuries. We're just gonna play soft coverage and let you guys drive down the field. It was the most lax, undeserved defensive drive I've ever seen.
And then it's just this.
But hey, man, that's all that matters.
Exactly that. But going with this game though, I just look at it from that sense where I'm like, this is that game where it's either, hey, if New Orleans loses, it's kind of they're 2-1. They have that game against Tampa on next Sunday. But then with Green Bay, it's kind of that, hey, will Green Bay rebound? Obviously, they lost the NFC South last week in Atlanta. Green Bay's home opener. But like I said, though, I think there's something about the Saints that really feels different this year. And also, too, I'll say this right now, and I've been calling this. Chris Olave is one of the best young receivers in the NFL right now.
Yeah, no, he's entering that like tier one is aggressive just because there's so many like elite receivers out there. Like truly, like like the reason why I think the Patriots this is not a Patriots centered point, but the reason why the Patriots receiver room hurts them, it's not that any of those guys are bad. It's just that every team in the league has 1,000-yard receiver. Every team in the league has some stud. So you have a bunch of second, third, fourth tier guys like Bourne and Parker and Gesicki and Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry is pretty good for a tight end. Like he's probably a top 10 tight end at this point in his career. So I will like give you credit on that. It's just if you go to every single team and it's like, oh, the Jets have Garrett Wilson, the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the Bills have Stephon Diggs, and then you go to every single division and everyone has like that guy, that like stud. So that makes it hard to rank Chris Olave because he's awesome. He's like a 1,500-yard receiver. But if I were to say, oh, he's an elite receiver, and then you make me list all the elite receivers, I'm going to start listing like 8 guys. So, but yes, he is a superstar. Vegas apparently likes the Saints here. Currently, I'm on the Packers. I may change my mind on that. I'm currently have the Packers in the Fab Five, just because I think they're the better team, and I think that they damn near won last week on the road without Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones practiced today. I think he's going to come back, and this is like we'll talk about this when we get to the Dolphins, but this is the Packers home opener, and like I do think that matters for some teams. Like I know hard for the Dolphins, not just because it's in September, but the team's doing well. The attendance has already kind of gone up the last few years, and the team's 2-0, riding hot. I think Hard Rock the Dolphins stadium is going to be packed. I can imagine in Lambeau, Jordan Love's debut, the start of the new era. It's probably going to be a packed crowd. It's probably going to be a very excited crowd. I think that matters for spots like this. So.
Your rival's coach might be a pedophile. We'll talk about that later.
Talk about that.
I just, like I said, there's just something about the Saints. And also, I'm not saying Chris Olave is like, no, not top 5. But I think when you list like all the young receivers in the league, obviously that excludes like, like your Hills, your Diggs. Like I'm talking about guys that have been drafted in the league within the last like 4 or even 3 years, going back to like 20, like all the 2020 drafts. Like when you think of all those young receivers, like how you go, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave's name is right in there. There's a few that I'm missing, and there's one that CeeDee Lamb. Like when you think of all those guys, he's in there. But no, I'm not going to go out there and say the top 5 receiver in the NFL. No. There's too many guys ahead of him for that category. For example, like that one, I would say off the top of my head, like no order: Jefferson, Chase, even though he hasn't proved it yet this year. Diggs, Hill, and Adams. I'd probably, if I had to rank it off there, and then I think Chris Olave falls in that like 8 to 13th tier for like receivers in the NFL. Detroit versus Atlanta. This is an intriguing game because I think America, excluding Alex Kemp talking to America live from Detroit last Sunday, I think America as a whole found out really that the Lions, not that they're not as good as we thought they were, but like, hey, they had a really come down to earth game. You and I were both on Seattle, I believe, for week 2. But with this game here, I think this is the game they rebound. I think this is the game where, everyone's going to think, hey, Atlanta's 2-0. They're coming in. They beat the Packers last week. But then this could be the game where I think, look, if I'm going to bet this game, I like that -3 for the Lions. I think this could be a field goal game, but I do think that Detroit has that game where it's kind of like, hey, they're here, especially too with Detroit. Because I always like to foreshadow because week 4, there's so many good games. Week 4, they have Thursday Night Football next Thursday in Lambeau. So we'll see what happens. But I think this is a game the Lions rebound. I'm not saying they're here to be good, but this is that game where everyone's kind of like, hey, the Lions aren't as bad as we thought.
Yeah, I don't have much of a feel for this one because I have a lot of respect for the Falcons. I picked the Falcons in the Fab Five last week. I actually didn't catch the bet because in my contest they closed as -1.5. Even though I initially took them at +1.5, and I said it on the show that I would take them at +1.5.
And
they won by 1 fucking point after Younghoe Koo missed an extra point. Like, God, it was so frustrating. So I love this Falcons team. I think this Falcons team is underrated. I think they're good. So bear with me here because this analogy is going to sound convoluted. I think they're kind of like the 2017 Jaguars in this way. Not at all in the sense of an elite defense, dominant, best defense in the league. Not at all like that. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is I think they're going to be probably one of the 10 best teams in football, but everyone's going to be hesitant to trust them because of Ritter. And everyone all season is going to bring this up every week. It's going to be Ritter, Ritter, Ritter. I don't trust Ritter. I don't trust Ritter to make the throws. I don't trust them to do well in the passing game. Every week, it's going to be like this, like it was with Blake Bortles back then. So I think they are really good, and people are so wired to think you can't be really good if your quarterback isn't that good, and I've always thought that was wrong. And I think Ritter is going to be good enough. But in terms of this game specifically, I could see it going either way, because is Detroit really going to lose 2 straight games at home?
That's the other thing.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
And also, I want to clear up my comments. I'm not saying Detroit's not as bad as we thought they were, but it's more of a, hey, how can this team who's, supposed to be this good team and take that next leap, how do they bounce back in the face of adversity? Obviously, because the home opener was this huge deal. You go in there, Barry Sanders Day. Go back and listen to my podcast because there was that one really horny fan in Detroit Sunday. But yeah, so I feel like Sunday's that chance for them to really kind of like right the ship going into that game at Lambeau Field. My God, Christian McCaffrey's so elusive.
And the other thing, you mentioned Lambeau Field, like that you could see that one of two ways. You could see, maybe they're looking ahead because the Lambeau Field game is on Thursday Night Football. It's such a big game. But the other side of that coin is, holy shit, you better win this game, because they're probably going to be underdogs on Thursday Night Football. I would guess. I could be wrong, but.
I think regardless of what happens, I do think they are, just for the fact that it is a road game and it is a short week, because you never really see the road team on a Thursday as the favorite. Like, for example, tonight's game, even though New York had that incredible comeback, they're still 10.5 for a reason. Cleveland and Tennessee, this is another really weird one to read, just because Cleveland, they looked good against Cincinnati, but then they laid a literal egg against they laid an egg against thing, as every sharp I see online is on Elijah Mitchell for tonight. This is a tough game for me to read. I'll say this. I don't know if I'd like to win, but I'd like Tennessee to cover that 3.5.
Yeah, I'm on the other side here. This is currently in the Fab Five. I feel disgusting about it. If there's anything I've built my reputation on the last 2 years, it's been telling you all how overrated the Browns are and how bad Deshaun Watson is. So obviously, why the fuck am I now taking Browns -3 when I'm so anti-Brown? So I want to be very clear. I still think this Browns team is overrated. This is not going to be a weekly thing for me.
No.
But their defense, a couple stats. So they allowed an offensive success rate as a team to the Steelers and Bengals of 23 and 27%. Those would be 2 of the 6 lowest success rate scores all of last year. And granted, 2 division games, 2 teams they know well. Also granted, Joe Burrow can barely stand straight right now with his calf, and the Steelers' offense is the worst in football right now. So there's natural caveats that can be applied to that. But the other caveat to that, though, is that I think that the problem is that the Titans' O-line is very bad.
Yes.
Peter Skoronski is probably still not going to play this game. I saw he didn't practice again today. That is concerning. And so this Browns defense has been elite. Neither of the 2 opponents, again with a caveat about, terrible Steelers offense, Joe Burrow's not healthy. Neither of those 2 teams ran a play in the red zone, inside the red zone. All the Steelers' field goals were outside of the red zone, and then they had 2 defensive touchdowns. So, this Browns defense is really good. It's in Cleveland. I think this Titans O-line is really bad. I think not having Skoronski hurts. I just think the Browns are going to get a lot of pressure on Tannehill. I think this is going to be a 5-sack day for Tannehill. And I think, as a result, I like the Browns on this spread. This will not be a weekly thing for me. I'm not going to take the Browns very often on the show or in the Fab Five generally, but I do like them this weekend. Just this weekend.
Okay. No, I get that. Next game here, we have Jacksonville and Houston. I know last week we were on them and it backfired, but I'm doing it again because I don't know if you saw this, but Trevor Lawrence is as a favorite, I think, of 7 or more points, has either not won a game or has only won 1 or 2 games. Your Wi-Fi is okay, sir. So with this game, Jacksonville-Houston, Jacksonville's an 8.5-point favorite. Jacksonville hasn't been overly impressive this year, but Houston has been. So I don't know if Houston's going to win this game. I wouldn't do that, but I like Houston on the points here. Oh, he is. I think he's frozen, folks. I think that, you know what? No. I think the Wi-Fi, no good. Wi-Fi. Sorry to improvise, but Big Rat has frozen up on us, so I'm going to take things away. And to quote McGarvin from last night's episode, well, if you're listening to this on Friday or Saturday, it was the episode I recorded on Wednesday, so kind of take that with a grain of salt for what it is. And like he said, we do things on the fly. Jack, I'm trying to find out the Jag spread record because I saw it. Oh, so they record against the spread. Okay, here it is. They were 10-9 in 2022. And Big Rat, you are back. Your Wi-Fi, like, look, it's a little pixelated there, but it is what it is. Did you hear anything I said before, by the way?
About what? Titans Browns?
No, Jags Texans. Okay, so we're gonna repeat ourselves, folks. So with Jacksonville, Houston. Oh, okay. So Jacksonville, Houston. I don't know if I like them to win. I like Houston to cover this game. It's like a rule from last week and a rule that's been applied for a few years now. Don't take big spreads in divisional games. Also, too, I think I saw something. Jacksonville Trevor Lawrence at least hasn't won a game as a huge favorite either. So I feel like this is that perfect close call divisional win. It could be a 10-point win for all we know, but I just don't. I trust Houston enough to not do that, especially after the game they had last week against the Colts.
I actually think the stat is that when he's favored by more than 4 points, he's like 0-5. Yeah, 0-5 against the spread or something like that. Texans beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville last year with a worse team, I think. I could be wrong. And I think the Texans, if there's one theme, like I like week 3 a lot because week 3 is one of the few weeks that has an identity. And one of the fun part about week 3 is that 0-2 teams put out a lot of effort. There's a line of demarcation in the NFL between 0-2 and 0-3. Much like we said with Chargers Vikings, it's do or die. So I like 0-2 teams in week 3. I think they put up a really good effort. That's actually why for Survivor this week I actually took San Fran and not Jacksonville. I just checked right now in our Survivor League. The most commonly picked team was Jacksonville, not the Cowboys, not the Chiefs. It was Jacksonville. And I think that's really risky. I would not take Jacksonville in Survivor this week. Generally don't like using Survivor picks in divisional games, but that in particular is a very, very scary one for me. So, again, I'm not predicting a Texans victory, but I do think they cover, and I do think the game could get close. And if it's close, you don't want that as your Survivor.
Yes, I do agree with that as well. Like I was looking at my league, and it's the second highest. So the highest ones for my Survivor League is this game right now: San Francisco, Jacksonville, Dallas, and Kansas City. Those are the biggest 4. Those are big. I still feel like even if Houston loses this game, it could be one of those things where if they keep it close, everyone's kind of like, "Hey, this is a different Texans team." Not to say that they're going to be anything, but this is a team that is no longer that pushover team in the NFL.
I will. And last thing I'll say, people might not realize this: Jaguars offense, 32nd in EPA, 32nd. What? Let me tell you, everyone, what that means. The 31st team is Zach Wilson and the Jets. Zach Wilson and the Jets through 2 weeks have a better offense than Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars.
They did not do anything against Kansas City, and I don't even think Kansas City was at their best last week either, because that's why they only put up 17 points. But moving on to that game in the aforementioned Zach Wilson as his Jets take on my Patriots, who they are an underdog right now. I'm going to say this right now. Bet this under game, not because of who's playing, but because this game's going to probably be played in a fucking monsoon. So there's a few games being impacted by a hurricane. I know this is one of them. I think Buffalo, Washington's another. Dove Kleinman tweeted it out earlier today. And I think there's 2 other games on the Eastern Seaboard that it's probably going to be a rainy mess. So I'm going to say this. I think this is where New England gets the win. And then it's kind of that – I'm going to say this because I'm honest about it, and I hate myself being honest about this, but New England's going to get that win, and then they're going to get their asses kicked in Dallas week 4. So that's just me. But I still think that when it comes to quarterbacks, who do I trust more? I trust Mac Jones because I think last week we truly learned Zach Wilson's not an improved Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Now, obviously the interceptions last week, as Danny will probably tell you, they were very late in the game. They were already down 20 points. He was just trying to make a play happen. So you can kind of forgive it a little bit, like some of those picks. My fear for Zach Wilson in this game is I think he's going to play very boring. I think he and the Jets and Salah are going to call the game like they did against the Bills. They're like not going to take any chances, not let him lose the game for them. They're going to be very run heavy. If they're in a situation where it's less than 2 minutes and there's like an opening of some kind in order to be able to like ice out the game, much like they did in that Bills game. I think they're going to just 3 times and not risk anything. So I personally think that he's just going to be boring, and that might be good for New England because it's hard to score a lot when you're boring.
This is going to be a very similar game, I think, to what we saw last year in that epic 10-3 thriller won by Marcus Jones, who unfortunately is out for the season more than likely with a torn labrum, as Leonard Williams gets a roughing the passer call, because we keep you updated here when it's Danny Dimes in primetime. What the dumb penalty, Leonard Williams. Dumb penalty to take. For New England, too, it screams must win, and it's that like back against the wall mentality where it's like, they've done it to themselves. I just can't see a world right now where they're the ones causing too many mistakes. I can just see a world where New England kind of like I said, this is a get-right game for the Patriots. I think the Patriots are going to go out there and do what they can to get the win. I think, look, Hunter Henry's back to being normal. It's just more about how does that offensive line play, and it's pretty much going to be whatever defense can make a play. I think whoever wins the turnover battle ultimately is going to win this game because both quarterbacks are prone to them. But ultimately, we'll wait and see. But I'm going to do this now. Can you hear me? Ooh, he's adjusting himself, folks. He's adjusting the camera. Don't not go there. Sunday afternoon in Bigrat's backyard, his Miami Dolphins are hosting. Can you hear me? Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. This is what's fun in the world of podcasting. I'm going to do something really quickly. I'm going to take them away, just show myself for a couple seconds, because obviously before we talk about Miami and Denver, we're just going to make sure all the technical difficulties are fixed, which we're going to try this again because obviously, look, there's some Wi-Fi issues as Christian McCaffrey rumbles and stumbles his way into the end zone, and it is now 16-3. So if you have if you have Niners on the spread, thank Leonard Williams for that silly little sack. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to put you away again, and then we're going to go from there. Let me just do something. Mute myself, unmute myself. Let's see what happens. We'll see what goes from there. Are we doing okay? So here's what I think I'm going to do. Folks, we're going to make things go on the fly because that is how we make things roll here. I'm going to do this because I'm a good guy, because I'm a good podcast host, and because this is episode number 247. I got to go there, copy the link. I'm going to... He's gone. Danny Dimes in primetime is just me, guys. It is just me, myself, and I, as I basically go and trying to reset on the podcast link. So if I'm vamping, it's because I have to. It's not because I want to. It's because I have to. Nothing on Bigrat. Look, no. Look, these things happen. Internet things happen. But anyway, with New England, I say the joke, like the thing about like getting their ass kicked by Dallas is like half joking, half serious, just because Dallas is that team. Like obviously, when you've heard of the things of being him, as he says, really sorry about this. It is never his fault. Dude, you're gonna hear this later, but you are totally excused. You just got to make things work. You got to make things happen. But going back to New England, though, it's just one of those things where it's like, look, they got to win. It's a now or never thing. For my mental and moral sanity, I want Victory Monday to occur. I want Victory Monday to happen for the New England Patriots, as he is back live in the flesh now on his phone, because we make things work here. We're going to jump right into it. Sunday afternoon, Hard Rock Stadium. I'm not even going to say their win. I'm saying give me that -6.5 as the Miami Dolphins are going to go in and run roughshod on these Denver Broncos.
I'm assuming you picked the Pats to win, right?
Yeah. I was basically saying before you came on, this is that get-right game for New England where, look, they're going to go out there and win, and it's going to be that, hey, look, Bill Belichick's fine, and then everyone's going to think, do they challenge the Cowboys? Yes. Will they end up probably losing by 20? Probably.
So I think the Yeah, so the Dolphins Broncos game is interesting. As I said earlier,
Will you be there?
Teams that are 0-2 are desperate. I am going to be there.
Okay.
I'm excited, very excited. And the Hard Rock Stadium, teams that are 0-2 generally they come out not want to lose. If any of you out there want to see the very best example of this, and this will always and forever in my lifetime at least be the best example of this, Vikings Bills 2018. The Vikings were at home against rookie Josh Allen. The Vikings were 16.5-point favorites. The Bills looked awful the first 2 weeks. They had like a minus 70-point differential, something outrageous. And the Bills won outright. The Bills kicked their ass. It wasn't even close. Like, the Bills dominated them. And
I had Vikings in survival.
And it's because these 0-2 teams, they're frisky. They like to fight. They like to battle. So I think that for that reason, I am scared because I do think Denver is concerning. I'm here. I'm just turning off my camera because I don't think people need to see me pull a shoelace out of my dog's mouth. So I do like the Dolphins here. I just worry that if we get that do or die performance from Denver, could they surprise? Could they be like the 2018 Bills? Now, I think the Dolphins are real, and I think the Dolphins are the type of team that take cares of business at home. I've given this stat many times before, but Tua is like 14-2 at home as the Dolphins starter. Basically, like the only games he's lost are the Packers game, and the cracked his ribs and they lost to the Bills, and a game against the Chiefs his rookie year when Patrick Mahomes went to the Super Bowl. Like they very rarely lose at home with Tua. When Tua starts and finishes the game, they very, very, very rarely lose at home. One of the other losses was like a 1-point loss to the Falcons in 2021 when they started the year 1-7. And the Deshaun Watson rumors were still going on at that time. Like, they very rarely lose at home. So I expect them to take care of business. I expect them to win this game. I am worried if the Broncos give that do-or-die performance. I think the Broncos are going to get a lot of checkdowns. I think the Vic Fangio, too high safety, don't give up the big play. Just let them work their way down the field. That's not great if you're a Marvin Mims fantasy owner, because I think a lot of people are going to be chasing those 2 long catches from last week, and I don't know if you're going to get them in this game. But what you might get is a lot of passes to Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams, like over and over and over again, with the Dolphins never adjusting, like being okay giving that up, and then those Broncos kind of move the ball down the field that way. But ultimately, I think the Dolphins will do enough. Not having Waddle would hurt. That does matter. But I still expect the Dolphins to win. I expect them to win. Hey, you calm down. I expect them to win like 27-20, something like that.
Yeah, like I said, I think Miami's for real. I think this is that game where Denver has that crippling doubt. But with Denver, because it's not like last year where, hey, the coach is the problem, this and that. No, this is Russell has a guarantee that he's due in March. So there's a very good chance that guarantee gets voided and he's shipped out of town. So we'll ultimately wait and see what happens. But it's not looking good if you're a Denver Bronco fan. Baltimore and Indy. The only thing I have to say about this game is I think Indy covers the 8.5. It seems like it's too high of a number, especially for how they played last week with Gardner Minshew. Anthony Richardson, like I said too before, it looks real, but I'm just sticking with that. I think Baltimore does move to 3-0, but I really like that 8.5 number for the Colts.
Yeah, and statistically, like Lamar Jackson is apparently really bad as a heavy favorite. He's kind of like Mahomes in this way. Like whenever the Ravens are favored by like 8 or more, they rarely cover. They did week 1, but that was the exception. I think the Colts having Gardner Minshew, yes, like obviously Anthony Richardson has a higher ceiling, but I think this early in the season though, against a veteran defense like Baltimore that loves to beat up on young quarterbacks, it might be better off for the Colts to have Gardner Minshew just make simple plays, not turn the ball over, the boring veteran quarterback stuff. I actually think that could come in handy in this specific matchup. So I like the Colts in the spread too. They didn't make the Fab Five, but I do like them quite a bit. The Fab Five so far up to now, for those listening, I gave out Packers -2. I gave out the Browns -3, and two games we haven't talked about yet, and I'm trying to remember the third, but I'll get to it. But in any event, like definitely agree that. Oh yeah, the Texans. We did talk about the Texans. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not put in the Colts, but they were a strong consideration of mine. I think Ravens generally not good as big favorites. Gardner Minshew won't be that much of a downgrade from Anthony Richardson at this point in their careers. I think the Colts are the right side.
And for me, so far, the one bet you'll see on my annual video is probably the over of Minnesota and LA, just because I don't know what the other two are yet. Spread picks, the ones that I like are Houston or Indy, so we'll wait and see what ends up making the final cut. But moving into Sunday afternoon, Seattle, Carolina. I'm going to say this right now. This just reeks of a boring game. This reeks of the under 42 hitting.
And let's talk about the Fab Five.
Ooh.
Carolina plus 6.5. And yes, I'm coming out hot. So, as I've said repeatedly on the show, 0-2 teams come out with a fight. 0-2 teams do really, really well when their backs against the wall, season on the line. Carolina qualifies for that spot this week. And Andy Dalton instead of Bryce Young, not a problem. Same arguments as Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew. I actually think it's a little different because Bryce Young hasn't really been turning it over. So I'm not like worried about like Bryce Young interceptions in the same way that I would be with Richardson. But still, Dalton, conversely, is better than Minshew. Like Dalton was really good for the Saints last year if you look at his raw numbers. And I think he was PFF's like 5th overall graded quarterback or something like that. So I think Dalton can do just fine. Now, look, don't get me wrong. These Panthers offensive skill players suck. They're really, really bad. Like Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst. This is one of the few teams the Patriots can beat with their receivers because at least Hunter Henry is much, much better than Hayden Hurst. So I think these receivers do suck. I just think why is Seattle laying 6.5 points here? Like, when do we trust Seahawks to cover a number that big? I think Seattle's definitely going to win this game, but I think them covering 6.5, their defense has not been good through the first 2 weeks. I think Carolina backs against the wall against a bad defense. I think Carolina will surprise people here. I like not at all fazed by the backup quarterback. I like 6.5. I'm taking Carolina 6.5 on the spread in the Fab Five.
Ooh, we love to see it. Only question I have about Arizona and Dallas is there a hope in hell that Arizona covers this 12.5, or is this another Dallas Cowboy ass whipping?
Sorry, everyone. This is our loving dog, Roscoe.
Oh, what a good boy.
He is a good boy. He's just excited right now, but he's a very good boy.
It's week 3 of the NFL season. It's week 3 of the NFL. You have to be excited for this.
You have to be pumped. Yeah. So Arizona is 2-0 against the spread so far. It should be noted.
They are,
and it should be noted that they have currently been giving teams hell. They've actually. It's not just that they're 2-0 against the spread. They've led for the majority of both of their games. So I think there's a chance. Again, the 2-0, the 0-2 factor, it applies for every 0-2 team. So it should be considered. But I would not bet on it, no. Because it just the biggest problem is that Josh Dobbs is probably going to really struggle with this Cowboys defense. And he's played okay the first 2 games. I don't know if he can play okay against this Cowboys defense. Weird scheduling quirk that the Cardinals play 3 teams from one division 3 weeks in a row. So I would say there's a chance, but I wouldn't bet on it.
I like the over of 42.5, though. I'm not going to lie.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way the Cowboys are playing right now, the Cowboys can get 30 by themselves. So all you need is for Carolina to be decently competent for like 2 drives.
I can see 31-14 being a realistic score here. That's just me, though. This next one really scares me with Kansas City laying the 11.5 against Chicago. Obviously, Chicago's DC Allen Williams was fired yesterday. A few things we learned. One, he might be a child pornographer, which we do not condone. No one condones that. The other thing that I think I forgot about, or I just remembered or just learned, that Peanut Tillman is an FBI agent. I did not realize that. Like, Chicago Bears legend now works for the FBI. And it was just so weird how it's like fired for reasons, like resigned for reasons that no one knows. You have the Justin Fields comments. There was this whole weird report about Hallis Hall getting raided, which I feel like if it were to have gotten raided, we would have known about it. There would obviously have been photos of FBI vehicles outside of Hallis Hall. But all that aside, and apart from my bias of last week of them not covering, this just spells that game that Kansas City proves to the world. We are the Kansas City of old. We are back to being a force. Like, this screams them, but I just can't trust the number because we all know how bad Kansas City is as a spread team in the Patrick Mahomes era.
Well, especially when it's a big spread. Like, he's good against the spread when he's an underdog or when he's a short favorite, like last week. But
yes,
when he's a big favorite, they're usually a massive fade. It's a shame. If all this bullshit wasn't going on, I would strongly consider Bears plus 13.5 in the Fab Five, because as bad as they've been through 2 games, they covered this number against the Bucs. Against the Packers, they didn't, but there's a lot of advanced analytical websites that think that Packers game more often than not should have been closer than it was, because one of the interceptions resulted in a pick six. And it's like, if that guy gets tackled where he catches the pick instead of returning it for a touchdown, maybe the score of that game is like 31-20 instead of 38-20 or whatever. So the Bears, 0-2, desperation spot. They qualify against a team that notoriously is bad at covering big spreads. But all this stuff with Alan Williams and all this stuff with fucking the Justin Fields comments in the presser, I'm just like, man, I don't know, man. Like, there's just like a lot of bad juju going on here. It wouldn't surprise me if they have like a resilient fuck the world performance after all the crap they've gotten this week. But yeah, I mean, this Alan Williams stuff is scary. And so, yeah, like, Griff didn't say that offhand. It's been heavily speculated amongst like Bears Twitter that Alan Williams was involved in something nefarious. And just some context clues for everyone to pay attention to. When they vehemently deny that Hallis Hall got raided, they never, ever deny that Alan Williams' house got raided, which was part of that same report. They're very quick to say, oh, there's a lot of misinformation online. The facility was never raided. But the original report was the facility and his home was raided. And they never talk about his home being raided. The Eberflus, like, not really addressing why he was leaving was weird yesterday. And then we get the statement from Alan Williams that he's stepping away from his health. But it comes right after all the leaks start happening that the FBI is involved with Alan Williams. And Peanut Tillman told the FBI, etc. Like, all those leaks started happening, and then we get the PR statement from Alan Williams. I'm actually just stepping away from my health. If you were really stepping away for your health, why would the Bears like not just say that the whole week? Why were they being so vague and evasive about why he wasn't around?
Yeah, like I said too, I would never throw, and I'm comfortable saying this, I would never throw child pornography allegations out, because that's something that is a very serious allegation. You don't just throw that out just for the fun of it. I know there was that tweet where Cordero Patterson, when he was a Bear, got a touchdown. It was like CP to the house, and I'm just like, guys, like people were writing that back, and I'm like, let's not make the jokes about that. But you are right, though. I only say that just because, and Mike Florio and Chris Sims addressed this today, but like, you would have seen the FBI vehicles, and the fact that a lot of these reports came from like those bot news sites, and that it wasn't official until you had Ian Rappaport basically state those 3 facts, where it was Hallis Hall didn't get raided, Peanut Tillman is not involved,
and the NFL is not involved.
And the NFL is not involved. So, but you are right. The fact that it was a letter from him and it had nothing to do with Chicago Bears font, it was just like something you typed up on Microsoft Word, where it's, hey, I resigned due to my health. There is a lot of red flags involved in this process. And look, at the end of the day, we just hope that we get more details, because look, we don't want to speculate and we don't want to really comment on anything, but it's for reasons like this is like why I like, obviously, look, if none of this was going on, I'd probably be more inclined to take the Bears on the spread again, like a weird, like the sick fucker that I am. But when you've got all this weird stuff happening, it's just gasoline on the fire, because that's what the Chicago Bears season is looking like right now, like a gasoline fire. And this is just the Justin Fields comments were one thing, but the fact that you have this PR nightmare shitstorm you got to deal with, it's just, there's so much around it that you just don't know what's going on. And like you said too, there's so much like stuff we don't know about yet. You have to figure some people in Hallis Hall probably know what's going on, because here's the thing too, his house was raided on Sunday. We don't know when Sunday, but like you said, no reports about that were denied. So we'll wait and see what ends up happening. But for the meantime, we just hope that, look, if anyone that was affected by this, that we just hope for the best for you, because obviously these are very serious allegations, especially if people are saying too, like you're saying, people are not just going to throw, oh, he was involved in child pornography out there just for fun. No, they're doing it because there's actual credible sources where it's probably coming from that, hey, this might be what's happening in Chicago right now with Alan Williams.
Yeah, and from a football perspective, like, I do think Justin Fields is going to run more. Like, everyone's been bitching about that the last 2 weeks. I understood why they didn't want to run him. They're trying to protect his health. They want to develop him in the other areas of his game. Like, it all makes sense to me why they wouldn't. But this is the point in the season when you're 0-2 where it's like, okay, if we don't run him, we're going to get fired. And yes, if he gets hurt, we're probably getting fired anyways. But we're probably going to get fired if we don't start winning. And so if him running is our best way to win right now, then at this point, the short term is more important than the long term. You have to care less about his health and less about his development as a long-term passer and more on what will win games right now. And maybe Matt Eberflus wouldn't get fired in his second year, although they have lost 12 straight games, which is bad. They haven't won a football game since they beat your Patriots last year in October 22nd, 2022.
Yeah. October 24th, 2022.
24th, yeah. So I don't think Eberflus is necessarily in trouble, but Luke Getsy definitely is if they keep playing like this.
They're basically damned if they do and damned if they don't. There's no real winning answer for what they're going to do in the sense of that. And also, I know Patrick Mahomes, this game should not be 425. I know Chicago's a big market, but I'm sorry. This is not a 425 game. This should be buried in the 1 o'clock window.
And Mahomes doesn't play at 1 p.m. on Sunday the rest of the year now.
It's just that's goofy. That's just goofy. Yeah. I don't even think Tom Brady was on a crazy run like that, like ever. I'm gonna say this right now. Sunday Night Football is disgusting. It's just there's no appeal to it. And I'm also gonna say this right now. I said this last night to a Patriots fan, McGarvin. I want your opinion. The 2023 Steelers are the 2022 New England Patriots.
That's a pretty good comparison. And I think
if the defense can't win you a football game, you're fucked.
And they had 9 first downs on Monday. 9. That's really, really bad. They did not. There's a very popular graphic going around on Twitter that is a graph between rush EPA and pass EPA on the X and Y axis.
Shout out, Randy.
Yeah, and it's not just that the Steelers are dead last. They stretch out the graph because they are so much worse than everyone else. Like, the graph has an obnoxiously large amount of space between the Steelers and the rest of the NFL. Like, if the Steelers weren't in the NFL, the picture would look so much smaller. It only looks so big because they have to stretch out the axes to include the Steelers in it. Their offense is horrible. They're on a short week. The Raiders' defense is not trustworthy. And so it's like weakness versus weakness. I have no real feel for the spread. A lot of people are betting the Raiders just because the Steelers look so bad on Monday. Like, the Steelers only won because of 2 defensive touchdowns. It's hard, like you said, it's hard to rely on that every week. I would lean the Raiders in this game. And very sadly, I think what people have to realize, last year, most of us said, wow, they went 9-8 in the rebuilding year. Mike Tomlin's never going to have a losing record. But when you don't improve that much on offense the next year and you get a little bit worse luck, then unfortunately, when you're only a 9-8 team to begin with, losing 1 extra game and going to 8-9 isn't that hard. So this could be the year. If they lose on Sunday, we have to start preparing that this could be the year.
Yep. My whole thing with this is just I slept on them all offseason. I'm not like I was never like they're going to be this great team. Like everyone, like they had this great preseason. I'm like, okay, cool. Remember the Cleveland Browns in 2019? They were supposed to win the AFC North. Week 1, they got cooked by Tennessee. When I look at this team, I'm like, besides George Pickens, what do you have on offense? Najee Harris, not it. Their offensive line, not that good. Their defense is good, but at the same time, too, blame Canada. It's literally is all Steelers fans want to do. Like, I think if they have a losing record and miss the playoffs, he's probably getting fired. There's probably no excuses around that. Like, you have to fire Matt Canada. If I were to bet this game, I'm not going to. I just take the under. I think you hold your breath. You take the under 40. Like this, This game screams like 16-10. This game screams like. Do you remember actually they played this exact same game on Christmas Eve last year? I believe it was 13-10.
Yeah, with the touchdown came on a very late drive by Pickett towards the last 2 minutes of the game.
Although this is going to be a home game for Pittsburgh, because let's face it, it's going to be all black and yellow in Vegas on Sunday, because Steelers, not apart from traveling well, it's the fact that, hey, it's Vegas, so it's like you get the two of them, you have Steelers fans everywhere. But that's all I gotta say about this game. Monday night, first game. Any chance Tampa covers that +5?
Last team in the Fab Five, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, baby. We got the Texans, the Panthers, the Texans, the Panthers,
the Browns,
the Packers, the Browns, and the Bucks. So if we remove Jordan Love, because Jordan Love has played well. But I guess let's include Jordan. He's still unproven. But here are the 5 quarterbacks I'm backing this week: Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, Andy Dalton, C.J. Stroud, and Baker Mayfield. Those are my 5 quarterbacks in the Fab Five. I love the Bucks here. I think if you listen to another thing I said a lot the last 2 years to a lot of the viewers, the Eagles 6-1 in one-score games last year. The Vikings get all the attention for going 11-0 in one-score games. The Eagles went 6-1. They're 2-0 in one-score games this year. So 8-1 in total, not including the Super Bowl. If you include the Super Bowl, it would be 2. So let's be fair. Let's say 8-2 in one-score games. The Eagles, even if they win this game, they're probably going to win this game by around a touchdown. So now the margin to cover 4.5 or 5 or 5.5 gets really tight. Now, if instead of winning by a touchdown, you win by 4 points, you don't cover this number. The game is on Monday Night Football. I think everyone's waiting in Tampa. Everyone, I think, is waiting for Baker to turn into a pumpkin. But I think it's misguided. Look, I'm not saying Baker has turned it around, because it's only been 2 weeks. He's played 2 awful defenses in the Vikings and the Bears. However, I will say, their offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, he was the quarterback coach for Geno Smith last year.
Yes.
And Geno Smith credits him a lot for the turnaround Geno had last year. What else is a similarity between Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith? Geno Smith had 2 elite wide receivers to throw to last year.
Mm-hmm.
So does Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's defense, and this isn't a Baker, this I guess is less of a Baker point. And I was screaming this in the offseason. This Tampa Bay defense is not that different from their Super Bowl defense. They really haven't lost that many guys. Most of the guys they lost are the mercenaries on the defensive line.
Yes.
Like Nitu and JPP and all those guys from the Super Bowl team. But like Shaq Barrett is still there. Levante David and Devin White still there. Carlton Davis still there. Antoine Winfield still there. Vita Vea still there. A lot of their best players are still there. Todd Bowles made Justin Fields' life a living hell last week. Now, they didn't run him very often. They'll run Jalen Hurts more often than they ran Fields last week.
Yep.
But if you also remember, Todd Bowles made Jalen Hurts' life a living hell in the 2021 playoffs when Tampa Bay played Philly back then. Now, the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. So it's a little bit different now than it was back then. And the Eagles might end up winning this game. But I think the Bucs on Monday Night Football at home are going to play with a lot of energy. I think the Eagles' issues in the secondary with all these corners that have been hurt, Vontae Maddox out for the year, against the Bucs receiver core, I think that matters. And I think the Eagles' offense, it's been kind of middling so far. And I don't know if they're going to be able to dominate the run in this game like they do with every other team. Like they dominated Minnesota in the run game. Are they going to dominate the Bucs trenches? Are they going to dominate Vita Vea in the run game? I'm not so sure. So, yes, the Eagles still have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. They have an embarrassment of riches. But I do think they're not going to run the ball that well in this game, which I think means their offense isn't going to score that much in this game. Their offense wasn't that good against your Patriots. Like, statistically, if not for the pick six, they didn't do much. So I think their offense is not going to be that good, and I think Baker's going to have success with these receivers. The only way I lose on this bet is if the Eagles O-line the Eagles D-line destroys Baker. If the Eagles D-line destroys Baker and Baker's like under pressure and throws a bunch of interceptions, yes, this bet is dead. I'm hoping that the Bucs O-line will do enough and that Baker will get the ball out faster to those receivers in the secondary down the field. So I like the Bucs plus 4.5, plus 5, plus 5.5, whatever it is. I think the Bucks can win this game, and even if they lose this game, I think they're going to lose this game and cover this number.
I'm going to say this right now, too, with all the odds. So basically, all the odds come from an app called BetStamp. It's like the Canadian version of Pick'It. If you use promo code GriffB, you can download BetStamp and basically shop for the best odds. So basically, it gives you all the best odds for varying NFL games. And basically, it's like, hey, Bet Rivers may have this, but then Bovita may have this, but then Caesars has this. So for this Monday night game, the +5 is available courtesy of our friends at The Score Bet. And for the second Monday night game, I'm going to say this. I know they're a favorite, but their backs are against the walls, and I feel like a lot of people doubt them. I like the Cincinnati Bengals outright. This is that 0-2. This is that 0-2 spark that takes them. This is that. Oh, the Rams look good. This is that, that Puka Nacua and all that stuff, which someone tried trading me Ramondre Stevenson for Puka Nacua in fantasy. Puka's looked great, but I just think that's a player that's eventually going to turn into a pumpkin. With this game, though, I like two bets. I like Cincinnati outright, and I think this is the game where Jamar Chase gets into the end zone. Because look, who's gonna cover him? Think about it. He's played two really good defenses in the first 2 weeks. Who realistically is going to cover Jamar Chase in the secondary? I don't know. My fantasy team also that has Brock Purdy as one of the quarterbacks needs that to happen as well.
I think that I agree with you. The Bengals, I know this is a loaded statement, and this might sound foolish because of their credentials over the last 2 years. I think the Bengals season is over if they lose this game.
Yes.
The division is too hard. The division is too hard. They already to Baltimore. It seems like, and this could be wrong, but it seems like the Browns are going to be a lot better this year. So I think the Bengals absolutely have to win this game. And as a result, I look, I'm not going to go as far as to say win if Burrow doesn't play, but even if Burrow doesn't play, I think they'll put up a hell of a fight. These guys are a team that even if Burrow's Hello?
You basically paused and then it went all like weirdo cinco basically. So we're probably gonna have to backtrack and get you to repeat that. So you're gonna have to hear it twice, kind of like me with Houston Jacksonville. But he is gone from there. But we can do this for fun. We can have two big rats on the podcast. But no, basically before you were talking about their whole 0-3 stuff with Joe Burrow, before you repeat what you said, I have one thing to say to you. Monday Night Football 2020, it was that Muppets game on ESPN, and they were playing the Steelers.
Yep. With Ryan Finley.
Ryan Finley, a quarterback. They won that game outright. So I think this is that game where it's kind of like, hey, Cincinnati gets their swagger back. And I was looking ahead to week 4 briefly. They play the Titans week 4. So this is more reason for a must win because if they're a favorite in that game, you know who to bet.
And I absolutely. And Mike Vrabel, the Under God King, who I am betting against this weekend with the Browns, and I'm very scared about it. But all I was going to say was that I think even if Burrow doesn't play, I think there's a lot of guys on this Bengals team who have played a lot of big games, and I think they're going to rise to the occasion. I think you'll see guys like Jermaine Pratt or guys like T. Higgins, guys like Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. I think these guys are going to make big plays even with a backup quarterback. Now, I'm not saying I would pick them to win without Burrow because that does hurt, but I think they'll give a really inspired effort. And with Burrow, I just think, I think they recognize the moment. I think they recognize this is a do or die spot for them. And I struggle to see them losing this game. It's football. Anything can happen. I know the Rams have looked pretty good, but I don't know, man. Like it gives me flashbacks to when my Dolphins played them on Thursday Night Football, and they were 1-2 at the time. And yes, Tua got concussed. We'll never know what happened, but they just played with like a we're back energy, and that's what I expect on Monday.
And there's a report too that they're wearing those. And look, the uniform bets went 0-2 this week with Cleveland and New England both losing in their throwbacks and their alternatives. But Cincinnati's in those nice white uniforms with the white helmet Monday night. So I'm just saying. Who day? One more quick thing before we go quickly. Obviously, we talked about Colorado last week. They looked good. They looked really good. But this week, I think, is a true litmus test against Oregon. My question for you is there, I think the more I look at it, I don't want to take them to cover the big number just because all of America's on it.
Yeah, I don't like them on the number. Like, I feel like if you think Colorado's going to keep this close, go real ballsy, bet on the money line, bet on the energy, the Dion magic continues. I think that's a better value for your investment than like, oh, I think they're going to lose by 7 points on the road
Yes.
on one of the most hostile environments. And look, I won't pretend to like watch Oregon games very closely, but this betting podcast I listened to was saying that Oregon at home is like one of the toughest places to play because they're the best version of themselves at home. Like more so than other college football teams, Oregon is the best version of themselves at home. And that makes it really scary. This Colorado team, look, it's a fun story. It was exciting. I loved that game against Colorado State, but they got outplayed. They were lucky to take that game to overtime. And Oregon is just such a good team. Bo Nix is going to go high in the NFL draft next year, higher than people think. I think he's going to be a second-round pick, if not a late first-round pick, which is hilarious because he was like a joke when he was at Auburn his first few years.
Yes.
But, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Kenny Pickett was a joke at Pittsburgh. Joe Burrow was a joke his first year at LSU. Guys improve. Guys get better. And so I think this is just too much to ask. Bo Nix with the defensive-minded head coach, they have more talent. Colorado's defense has not been good. Like, they limited Nebraska, but that doesn't mean that much. Their defense gave up 30 to Colorado State and 40 to Texas A&M. TCU. So it's just a tough spot. Like look, I think it'd be fun if they won. I think it'd be fun if the magic kind of continued for another week. But yeah, covering 21 points, it's just tough. It's just a different level of competition.
69.5, baby. Don't even think about sweating it. Just take that and run. That's the thing too, because I'm like they haven't been challenged yet. It's that whole TCU 2023 is what LSU 2020 was, where it's just they lost all their guys. Nebraska's Nebraska, and then Colorado State. Look, you deserve to you had to do what you had to do, but you barely squeaked out the win. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, Autzen Stadium, give me the Ducks. And also, I actually had to take before I go one more thing. I just said this last night. So earlier I said with that Denver could possibly. There's that I think there's a weird way Denver could get out of the Russell Wilson contract after this year. A quarterback I like that I think will go that I feel like the normal NFL fan doesn't know about, but you and I know about. Michael Penix Jr. for the Denver Broncos.
Penix is a beast. I've had him on my college fantasy team since he was at Indiana. Love Penix. He's a stud. That conference is crazy right now. Like Sanders at Colorado, Bo Nix at Oregon, Caleb Williams at USC, and Penix at Washington. It's loaded. I like Penix a lot. Tua, bigger arm.
I just don't want him in the AFC East, but you know what? AFC East has their quarterback situation figured out. But anyway, guys, episode number 248. I have to double check that just because look, I do things on the fly here a lot. And yeah, so episode 248 is in the books. Episode 249 coming out Monday night. Kyrie Thompson is back with me where he DM'd me this himself. Let's get weird. But anyway, guys, for Bigrat and I, I'm Griff. You know where to find us. Have a good night, everyone. Enjoy week 3 of the NFL football season.